right, we're rolling down Lake Street. The first we see, we're just hammering them with 40s.
Yes, sir.
Is that a good copy?
Hold on to those points.
We're gonna go find some more people. Instead of chasing people around, we're going to hunt. You guys are out hunting people now, and it's just a nice change of tempo.
Yep, agreed.
These people.
Shocking new body cam footage has come out of the police behavior during the George Floyd protests of last year. This footage shows that police officers in Minneapolis have clear contempt for both the press and the general public, as well as protesters. These police officers seem giddy at the idea of going in violently to suppress these protesters. And this clip right here demonstrates that when the police officers were out arresting journalists last year, they knew exactly what they were doing.
Yeah. They can't go anywhere.
Well, hold on a second. Let me check your credentials, make a few phone calls just to verify who the
They think they can do whatever they want.
And they were using phony credentials checks to suppress the coverage of what they were doing, to suppress coverage of the fact that it was in fact the police escalating the situation. And then in this clip, their political motivations become very clear.
I'd love to scatter them, but I thought it's time to put 100 people in jail.
Yeah.
And just prove the mayor wrong about his white supremacists from out of state.
I agree.
Although this group probably is predominantly white.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's not looting and fires.
And before we get into it, we need to point out, only one police officer has been punished in any way, shape, or form surrounding last year, and that was a whistleblower who was talking about the problems internal to the police department. The mayor, Jacob Frey of Minneapolis, has done nothing to reform or change the police department in Minnesota and has not punished any of these officers that played a huge role in escalating violence last year. But let's get to it. That is an unbelievably racist statement to make. First and foremost, A, they say they're setting out to prove the mayor wrong, to make some sort of big claim about, oh, there weren't white supremacists trying to escalate things. But then to turn around and say, oh, that crowd must be more white because they're not rioting? Are you literally kidding me? And then let's be clear. They go and arrest those people. You hear this cop right here admit that crowd over there isn't really rioting or looting or burning anything, but let's go arrest them anyway. And there's just so many layers of absolute racism and just over the top zealotry. This is unbelievable. And this shows the very clear and obvious political and racist motives of the Minneapolis Police Department. They view the protesters on the ground as political opponents, and they actively want to suppress the dissent. They also apparently view it as their role to enforce racist stereotypes by specifically targeting and arresting people of color to prove a point to the mayor. And then we have the reason why all of these videos got released is right here. What you just saw was a video of police officers not announcing themselves, but firing their rubber bullets out of their vehicle unannounced on a crowd of unsuspecting people. Now, in this instance, somebody fired back with a weapon. They recently got acquitted of attempted murder charges on police because they were using self-defense. Because from their perspective, a random white van drove by and started shooting at them. That's a pretty scary situation to be in. They didn't identify themselves as police officers, and you bet they did it to way more than just that person. And then you see the police officers follow up with this response.
Sir, listen. Put your hands on the bed! Listen. Put your hands on the bed! Listen, sir, listen. Put your hands on the bed! I'm trying. Put your hands on the bed! I'm trying. Put your hands on the bed!
Going over the top in brutalizing this person who was simply trying to defend himself because he had no idea what was going on. There was no way for him to know that police officers were the ones randomly shooting people in the streets. Because of course, how would he know that? Police aren't supposed to be randomly running through the streets shooting at people, regardless as to whether or not it's a real bullet or a rubber bullet. I want to point something out that's very, very important to understand. And that is the fact that the police will intentionally turn peaceful protests into riots in order to delegitimize and discredit what the protesters are asking for. They have an intentional strategy of escalating violence whenever they have left-wing protesters because they want the media to focus on, oh, look at the protesters doing all these things. This is part of their strategy. The alt-right and fascists have that same tactic as well. It was literally one of the tactics that was used in Germany in the 1930s as a propaganda tactic against socialists and the left. They would disrupt protests by committing acts of violence against protesters and then take any retaliation and paint that as evidence that proves that the protesters are being violent. This is the propaganda campaign that police officers are running in Minneapolis. It is a propaganda campaign that police officers are running across the country, and it is historically how fascists have used propaganda against the left. They take peaceful protests, commit violence against them, and then use any retaliation as evidence to prove that the protesters were the ones that were causing all the problem. This is why these police officers went after the press, and then they went after the protesters, because they wanted to make sure that their escalation was not documented. The good news is the police officers did a very bad job of doing that, and their escalation was documented. This is Ben Carollo with Rebel Headquarters. You can catch my show Galaxy Brain every Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on the Young Turks Twitch channel. You can also follow me on Twitter if you want to stay up to date with my content.